All right, everyone, we are live. Welcome to our Curb Your Cravings webinar. We appreciate all of those that have joined us tonight and will join us as you listen to this in the future. We will go ahead and get started. I will go ahead and introduce myself first. So my name is Melody, and I am the founder of Pharmaceutical and Pharmaceutical LLC and our team. And my background is as a clinical pharmacist, and I have worked with a lot of patients over the years that have struggled to lose weight or they've had struggled to control their blood sugars. My specialty has been in diabetes, and then as I started to learn more about functional integrative medicine, I started to connect the dots between not only the blood sugars, but checking gut health and looking at the connection between the microbiome and weight loss and diabetes, but also even nutrient depletions and simple things like that were really sort of missing from the big puzzle when we start to talk to patients about, how do we lose weight and why we lose weight. And I think some of the most beneficial conversations I think I've had with other practitioners in my career have been with like psychologists and people that are doing mindset work. And so I started to learn, it wasn't just about the patient's decision to lose weight or to not lose weight or to choose this food versus that food. There's so much more that's going on in their life and in just their past experiences and things like that. So I met Nicole back in 2020, and Nicole has been part of our team since then, which we're so thankful for. And she has been a rock star health coach for us. So I'll let her give her bio about, her and what she's here to talk about tonight.
Hello, I am indeed Nicole Grams. I have been a part of the Farm to Table team, like Melody said, since 2020. It's been a wild ride, and I've loved every minute of it, mostly. But yeah, I love working with people who are struggling with things like this, with cravings, with weight loss, with anxiety, with all kinds of different things. I really love diving deep and finding out what's holding you back from doing whatever it is that you want to be doing. And I thought, Melody asked me to do a webinar and a little thing. And I'm like, oh, let's talk about cravings, because I think that's something that everybody struggles with. And it's such a huge mental piece of what you're doing in your life, right? And we're not taught how to deal with cravings without, just giving into them all the time. But anyway, all right, let's dive in, because I want to conserve my voice as much as possible. I am getting over some laryngitis, and I've got my cough drops and I've got my tea sitting here. So I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible while I have a ton to say about this. So without further ado, let's start with what are cravings. I guess before we dive into that, I want you to think about why you're here today and why you're watching this, if you're watching this in the future. What are you here to learn? What are you hoping to achieve? Most people that are in the room tonight probably have something to the effect of, I want to stop having cravings. I want to take control back. I want to feel like I'm in control. I feel like I'm out of control whenever there's sugar around. I want to be able to stick to the plan that I have. All of those revolve around the cravings that we feel. And we're going to talk about why they're such a challenge. And I'm probably going to change the way you've been thinking about them. And hopefully that's for the better. I'm going to show you a way of thinking about them that will actually serve you instead of leaving you feeling powerless and defeated. I'm going to teach you some information, and I'm happy to answer questions that you have along the way or at the end. So please put them in the chat, and I will address what I can. And we'll talk about a way to work with me more in the end. Spoiler alert, we've got a 4-week program called the Craving Solution that we're starting in January. And we're going to deep dive into cravings specifically and help you learn how to process them, how to not have them sabotaging your efforts to lose weight or stick with your plan. And we'll go more into that at the end. So for now, let's dive in. What is a craving, or what are cravings, right? It's a powerful desire for something. It's an intense urge to specifically eat a certain type of food right now. Usually it's not something that you want later. It's something right now. Usually it involves either sugar or salt or fat or a combination of all three. My personal cravings are usually for sugar. I'm running to the store because they have the store nearby because they have this incredible cookie dough that's edible and it's on sale and it's fantastic. I also like to dabble in the shame of my cravings by, buying a peanut butter cup and eating it on the way home and like burying the wrapper in the garbage so my spouse doesn't see it, even though he absolutely does not care and has told me this multiple times. Like it's still something in my own head that I struggle with. So I can relate if you can. Um, I've also got some experience with emotional eating. I find myself standing in my pantry, looking and looking and looking for, sometimes 3 or 4 times in an afternoon if I'm doing something that's stressful or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, right? Because that's just what sort of happens when that becomes your default way of going about emotional control, basically. But why does it seem like they're taking control? So we'll dive into the neuroscience behind it all in a little bit, but it boils down to the brain's reward system. In the past, you've eaten something that brain thinks is, absolutely amazing. It gives you lots of feel-good neurotransmitters. It lights up that reward center in your brain. Brain wants to feel good. So it reminds you, especially if you're having negative emotions or feelings, that, hey, you remember this thing? It made you feel so much better in the past. Like, you better go find that right now. Like, let's go get it. Super helpful, but not very helpful, right? Let's see. How do I? It's not working. There we go. So what does a craving feel like to you? Have you ever thought about this yourself? So I want you to notice that craving is a feeling, right? And this is important because you don't act on all of your feelings. So just think about that for a second. The craving this particular emotion or feeling might just be something that requires a little bit more skill that you haven't applied to it in the past yet. We are very quick to escape this feeling of emotion, and it's intense for a reason because brain wants you to act on it. But the next time you're having a craving, sit with it. Notice what sensations you feel in your body. Sometimes I notice that I have like a fluttery feeling, like butterflies in my stomach. I might notice some tension, especially in the shoulder and jaw area. Like just all of this just gets very tense sometimes. I sometimes feel like there's an emptiness in the pit of my stomach. Like it just feels deep and vast. And, we need to act on this urge in order to solve it, right? There's a restlessness. There's, momentary intense hunger. And I say momentary because most of the time, if you can make it through these few seconds of a craving, and it can be just a few seconds, although if the more you resist it, the longer it will last. But this intense hunger passes because if you're not actually hungry, that's a very different thing in your body, right? But yeah, next time you are having a craving, just take a moment and feel what it actually feels like in your body. So what happens after you act on a craving? I try my best not to say give in to cravings because that in and of itself implies willpower. And, controlling willpower is, the less I can let willpower be in charge, the better. But yeah, the feeling and the action are separate things. But when you act on a craving, there's going to be temporary satisfaction. Brain wanted you to eat the thing, so you ate the thing. You have a dopamine spike. Brain is successful, right? You feel some relief, but then guilt and regret kicks in. I maybe shouldn't have done that. The disappointment, I was going to do better than this, but, I wanted to stick to my plan and I let myself down. So I'm feeling disappointed. You can have physical discomfort, whether that's bloating or indigestion. You can feel out of control, like, I couldn't resist. I'm a big failure. Bigger picture, you lose progress on reaching your goals or you give up altogether because it's too difficult, right? We don't want that for you. But yeah, so let's dive into what causes cravings. There's lots of different possibilities, and we're going to start out with the biological explanation. So the physical causes of cravings. It can be hormone imbalances, especially leptin and ghrelin, but also sex hormones. So like think about pregnancy and and PMS, right? Leptin and ghrelin are the satiety and hunger hormones that tell your brain when to eat and when you're full. And if if there's anything going on where levels are off or the brain stops responding to them, you can have lots of issues and lots of cravings. Other hormones can be impacted too, like I alluded to, the pregnancy and PMS especially. The estrogen and progesterone are present in all bodies, but for those of you who menstruate, you could know that at certain phases in the menstrual cycle, you may feel absolutely ravenous. You may have lots of cravings, right? When estrogen is high, it suppresses hunger. When it's low, especially if progesterone is high, there can be a ton of cravings and you feel less satisfied after you're done eating. So you just feel hungry all the time. Lack of sleep. This has to do with how sleep affects your metabolism. So if you're short on sleep, leptin and ghrelin are imbalanced and you can have lots of cravings from that. Poor hydration. As I was looking into this a little bit more, it actually said poor hydration can give you especially strong sugar cravings. The article I was reading said that the lack of fluid can make it difficult for organs to release energy stores. So the body wants more fuel, aka sugar, available immediately. So it makes sense that you're going to crave sugar if you're feeling dehydrated. But it can also be the case that you confuse the body's thirst cues for hunger cues and act on that instead of just drinking some water. Increased physical activity. In the very short term, exercise actually lowers hunger, like right in that moment, especially for longer or more intense workouts. Kind of puts brain into fight or flight mode and it shifts the blood away from organs and you're not as hungry in that moment. However, if you're increasing physical activity, excuse me, if you're increasing physical activity, you're burning a bunch of extra energy that you're not used to burning, and then your hunger increases as a result of that. Microbiome imbalances can play a role. Gut bacteria influences what you want to eat, as well as, your mood, blood pressure, all kinds of different things. Nutrient deficiencies can play a role. So if you're lacking some nutrient in your body, you may have cravings for the types of food that contain that nutrient. Medications can be a huge one. And I almost forgot to add this on there because I'm a pharmacist, right? This is what I should be thinking about, but it slips my mind all the time because from a functional medicine lens, we want to be looking at lifestyle first and then medications later. But medications are a part of so many people's lives and they can impact the cravings that you're having, especially if you're on antidepressants or steroids like prednisone or, there's lots of different things that can influence how you relate to food. And yet
Even
none of these,
antihistamines.
what was that?
I was like, even antihistamines can
Yep.
cause, you to crave or to be more hungry. And so people are on antihistamine all the time for allergies or seasonal allergic rhinitis. But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's so many different things physically that can change how you're craving things or change the cravings that you're having. There's also, I don't know why these buttons aren't working. There we go. The mental causes of stress, mental causes of cravings. Stress is one of them. Acute stress tends to suppress appetite and cravings because we're in fight or flight again and focused on alleviating the stress. But longer lasting stress, chronic stress, is more associated with cravings for high fat, high calorie, calorie dense foods. During the times of stress, the body is using up nutrients faster. There's also, emotional load that the brain wants to escape. Cravings kick in. Impulse control is linked to cravings because brain sees something, brain wants something. And if you're used to giving into those impulses, it's going to keep pressing that button. Mood, usually you want to eat something to cope with stress and negative emotions and kind of avoid feeling those negative emotions. And it's very effective at doing that. Setting in context. So this is, excuse me again. Your brain sometimes will associate specific places or events with specific types of food. So think about going to the movie theater. What are you going to get there? Most of us probably want popcorn. Sorry, I'm going to pause for a second. All right. So yeah, movie theater, you get popcorn. Whenever you're at a wedding or a birthday, you probably expect there to be cake. If you're, from Wisconsin, or if you're in other states that do this, if you're tailgating before a football game, You can't wait for the brats and the beer before before going in to watch your team, right? But then there's also emotional connection. There's often comfort associated with foods, comfort foods, right? You've heard of that before. But I can remember as a kid, my mom making chocolate malts for us really special sometimes in the evenings. So I felt connected to her in that moment, in those moments, right? So the chocolate, and whenever I have a chocolate malt, I think about that. My grandma always made popcorn balls to give out at Halloween. And if you don't know what popcorn balls are, it's just popcorn
Mm.
with a bunch of corn syrup. It will absolutely pull all of your fillings out. But she made them every year. And I just associated that with her and with Halloween, right? Maybe when you were sick, your dad would make his special pancakes for you. So now when you're sick, you start craving pancakes, that sort of thing. Like there's an emotional connection. I used to work at a pharmacy where someone would bring in emotional support brownies. We've been having particularly bad days. But yeah, um, there's a lot of context that we need to consider when we are looking at cravings and what's causing them. And I can tell you all day about drinking more water to feel more hydrated and stop, craving sugar, but that's not going to solve the problem where the emotional brain is involved. There we go. All right. So the primal brain versus the adult brain. So back in the day when food was scarce, our primal brain or amygdala or toddler brain or lizard brain, there's lots and lots of different names for it. Primal brain helps us to survive right now. It only thinks about right now. And the primal brain helped us seek out food in order to survive. So in order to survive, we have to find the food, we have to eat the food. Brain is going to reward us because we get to live another day. It feels good. And if you don't seek out the food, you don't get the nutrients and you starve to death, which is very painful, right? So most food, again, back in the day, it was not very rewarding. So whenever we came across something, rare, perfectly ripe berries, for example, brain gives a bigger reward. The berries happen to have lots of nutrients in them, but brain doesn't remind you of that specific part. It just says, hey, this tasted really good. I want you to memorize everything about this moment. I want you to memorize where to find these berries so that you can go and do it again tomorrow, right? We want to keep getting these nutrients. We want to keep eating. We want to keep surviving. And you might be able to guess that today, when you can get food just about anywhere, this primal brain is less helpful for us. Your adult brain, or your prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is the one who decides a lot of things in advance. So it's the part of you that knows what you should be eating. It plans, how you should be behaving. It's planning for long-term success. It understands delayed gratification. If we stay in that part of the brain all the time, we wouldn't have cravings. But unfortunately, that part of our brain is really slow to respond. And the primal brain is very fast right now. Let's get the chocolate. I have to taste this. I need it right now. And if I don't get it, I'm going to throw an absolute tantrum. So you can imagine that can be difficult to deal with. And which brings me to takeaway number 1. Your brain is not broken. There is nothing wrong with you for struggling with cravings. Your brain is literally wired this way. It is wired to seek pleasure. It is wired to avoid pain or discomfort, and it is wired to conserve energy. There's a lot of pleasure in food, and we talked about this already. But the primal brain only thinks about right now, always right now, and right now it wants the pleasure of food. Brain is also wired to avoid pain, and in this case, hunger means pain, and hunger means starvation. So we must solve for the hunger immediately, and most of us are not used to actually feeling hungry, right? So think about the last time you really felt hungry. For a lot of us, it's been weeks to months, or maybe we don't even remember the last time we were actually feeling hungry. But yeah, brain is also wired to conserve energy, and it's much easier to open a bag of chips than it is to cook a whole, balanced, nutritious meal. The food industry does not help with this at all. So basically, what I'm asking you to do in working through cravings is to learn to deal with the literal not deal with it, but go against the literal wiring of your brain in order to work through the craving without taking action. So as you can imagine, you might feel some negative emotions around this, which is, exactly the opposite of seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. Simple, right? Not a big deal. But then on top of that, we've got food science. And there are literal teams of scientists working at food companies who are trying to discover exactly what makes their food the most craveable it can possibly be. These scientists have studied the brain and they can figure out exactly how crisp and crunchy something has to be in order to hit that reward center exactly right, right? They're spending more than full-time hours on this job. And they are looking for the exact right combination of sugar and fat and salt to make it hyper palatable, easy to digest. We remove the things like fiber, we remove the things like nutrients that get in the way of getting that dopamine burst in our brain, hitting that reward center. So these hyper palatable foods signal really, really positive feelings in the moment right now, and it really appeals to the primal brain. So you have to also consider that eating these hyper palatable foods too often can interfere with how your brain processes hormone signals that tell you that you're full. So you keep having cravings even when you've eaten enough. So basically, what's happening in food science is we're taking nutritious food that combines the sugar with fiber and nutrients, and we've concentrated it into this tiny little bite-sized thing that will give us intense pleasure in our brains. So instead of having the slow release of dopamine from eating a whole piece of fruit, we have the juice that gives us a big spike right now. So essentially, it's concentrating the desire at the same time that it's concentrating everything that makes it craveable, right? Brain wants easy, happy chemicals, and it memorizes this pattern of more intense feel good, and it tries to push you down this path as frequently as possible, especially when you're having feelings that move you that are more negative and that you want to escape. So you're actually starting to get cravings from the food itself because it's not natural, and there have been people that have been paid a lot of money to make it craveable. So this is the part of the reason that willpower does not work. If you try to stop the cravings using willpower alone, you're going to be in this semi-constant state of resistance. So anytime you feel a desire, you resist it and you try to contain it, and it's going to kind of push against a brick wall, basically. Willpower is temporary, and you're going to feel miserable, and you're going to start to shame yourself, and then willpower runs out again, and you feel more ashamed, and you feel like something is broken because you can't seem to not eat the cookies, right? Not fun. And we don't want to rely on willpower at all necessarily to get things done. So takeaway number 2, navigating cravings without acting on them is a skill that you can develop. It's good news. It's not a switch that you can turn on or off at will. We wouldn't be sitting here today if it was. These are skills that need to be practiced that will help you eat what you want to eat and stick with your plan. So in order to be successful long-term, you have to be kind to yourself and you have to love yourself while you're trying and while you're making mistakes. Because if you don't land in that part of it, if you don't love yourself on the way, you're not going to love yourself when you're better at this particular skill. That's not really how it works, right? All right. So the secret here to dealing with cravings is to allow yourself to feel them without taking action on them. And it really can be that simple. And I say simple, but it's not easy. You will be completely awful at it when you first try, because right now all the emotions are so entangled with the craving and the eating and the food and the process and the pattern, right? It's all entangled. And your brain has been conditioned to escape the feeling of cravings as soon as possible. So it's for sure going to be uncomfortable when you try to not. You're probably not going to encounter anybody who has ever had cravings and just decided one day that they're not going to have them anymore, right? And they just never struggle with them again. I've dealt with cravings myself, and it is not a fun thing when you're shopping at Costco, because that can get really expensive really fast, right? But anyway, Brain is used to pressing the easy button, and it might even be your default setting, as it was for me for so long. So you don't even notice the moment between when the craving hits and when you take action on it. So for me, I had kind of trained my body to want specific things so that I got cravings for them, but I would eat them every chance I got. So, for example, at work, and anytime the receptionist had candy, I was there, right? Anytime I'd go to talk to her about something and she had something on her desk in front of her, yep, taking one of those. This is great, right? But I conditioned myself to want that. And I would actually get disappointed if she didn't have anything at her desk when she was there, which didn't happen all the time, but like, yeah, it didn't seem like I even thought about it. It seemed automatic, but it is not. So imagine you have your favorite bag of potato chips sitting in the table in front of you, or, insert whatever craveable thing that you go to. Maybe you're even hungry, right? Let's up the stakes a little bit. And these chips feel like they would be incredible right now. You can already taste them. Your brain gets excited. You're almost there. You pick up the bag, you open it, you can smell it. There's just this delicious fried goodness contained within, right? And just as you're about to take a bite, I step in and I offer you $1,000 cash right now if you can put it down and walk away. You have a choice to make, right? Choice number one, you forget about the money and you eat the thing. Choice number two, you feel a little bit disappointed about not being able to eat the thing. You feel deprived, you feel hunger, you feel whatever it is. But then you can take the $1,000 and walk away. All of a sudden, when there's a reward that's more exciting than the food for your brain, it's not as difficult to forego the craving. So think about that, right? And that might seem a little bit unfair because most likely you're not going to have somebody offering $1,000 every time you want to take a bite of chocolate. Unfortunately, right? So how do you do that without an external incentive like that? It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of trying. You also have to have a really juicy reason to stick with the plan, and sometimes multiple reasons. You have to practice more. You have to fail sometimes. You have to be able to forgive yourself often, right? And then you fail less often, and then you keep going, right? But if you're anything like me in the past, you've probably tried a few different ways to deal with your own cravings. And we've talked about willpower and how reliable it is at best, unreliable it is at best. So give it 2 weeks with something and you're out, right? So why do so many people quit their New Year's resolutions of losing weight somewhere, mid to late January, February at best? You need a different set of tools to work with. And that's why we're starting this in January, because so many people have these goals of weight loss in the new year. And we want to be there to teach you a different way to do it so that you're not done early February, right? We're just going to be getting started. Avoidance doesn't work. Keeping the things out of your house so you're not even exposed to them. I mean, it can help at home, but the second you're out with friends and the nachos get put on the table at the restaurant, you are binging the heck out of those, right? Because you haven't prepared yourself for the emotions that you'll feel by not eating those nachos. Distraction doesn't work as a long-term solution. You have to stay consistently distracted from what your body's feeling if you're using distraction, right? Eventually, you're going to need to rest. And when you rest, what is brain going to tell you? Go get the thing. We need this right now, right? Replacing the food craving with a healthier option can be a very good step in the right direction. It can be a very helpful baby step, right? At the same time, though, you're still acting on the craving, so your brain isn't learning anything new, really. The craving is still there. You're just giving it something slightly more disappointing in response. So we don't want to rely on, oh, you're eating chips. Let's replace that with, some healthier option, carrot sticks or whatever. Again, great step in the right direction, not helpful long-term as a solution. So yeah, shaming yourself also not helpful because that's, the method that a lot of people use. It's not going to last long-term because you're just in this shame spiral. And then in order to not feel shame, then you turn to food to cover that up, right? But none of them solve the root cause of the problem. All right. So this takeaway might not be as big of a stretch as it once might have been if you've been paying attention. The hardest part here is how you feel about not taking action when you don't. And well, hardest part, how did I write this? Is how you feel about not taking the action and eating the thing. Okay. So it actually takes a lot more effort to get in the car, drive to the convenience store, purchase the cookie dough, drive back, eat it in the car, hide the packaging until you get in the garbage with the lid on it so nobody else can see it, right? That's literally what I have done in the past. It takes more effort to just sit there and not do the thing than it does for me to do all of those things, right? It takes less effort to just sit there than it does to dig in the freezer, get the ice cream scoop out, find the bowl and the spoon, and you have to clean it all up and put away everything when you're done, right? That's a lot of effort that we're putting into a craving. So why are we doing this? Why are we doing it all when we logically don't want to be taking this action? And this isn't going to be a surprise again, but a lot of the times the cravings come in order for you to cover up some emotions that are there, but your brain doesn't want to experience them. Things like stress, overwhelm, sadness, grief, anger, boredom, exhaustion. You have to learn how to process those if you're not going to distract your brain with food cravings. And it is not easy to feel those negative emotions. You also have to be willing to feel the negative emotions of not having the reward itself. You don't get to feel the dopamine rush. You actually get the opposite. You feel disappointed. You feel deprived. You feel urges. You feel hunger and cravings, and you might feel excluded if it's a party sort of thing. All of these things you have to be willing to feel in order to not eat the thing, and that's really hard to do. It's absolutely terrifying. It's uncomfortable. No one teaches you how to experience the discomfort of emotions. We're all taught how to bail on all of them and cover them up to the point where we can struggle with managing our lives. So your primitive brain wants you to eat the thing and get a little hit of dopamine right now, and it wants to feel that instead of feeling whatever emotion it is that you're having. So if you think about it, it's really running the show. You come home from work and you're stressed out, your brain wants to escape that negative emotion, so you look for the chocolate stash. Because to brain, having sugar is a much better feeling in the body than having stress. So let's do that instead. It's the easy button to feeling better right now. You get cravings because, something in your life isn't great. So what happens when you're taught to tune into your body and allow the feeling of stress without needing to escape it? So you know yourself well, and if you were to know yourself well enough to be able to process and reduce the feeling of stress when you get home, how to cope with it properly, and you don't need to escape it with food, right? And all you have to do is start with finding that moment between the urge and the action, and then you step in and intervene, right? So here's the takeaways that we kind of went over. 1, your brain is not broken because you struggle with cravings. 2, managing cravings without acting on them is a skill that you can develop. And 3, the hardest part is how you feel when you don't act on your cravings. And if you are interested in diving in to all of this and learning how to do this, learning how to perfect this skill, we're going to be diving deep into the cravings for 4 weeks in January. Bring your friends so we can all practice together. The program is called The Craving Solution, and I'm going to be teaching it myself. Some of what we are going to cover is handling cravings when they hit, talking about the shame around food, working through all that. I'll teach you how to like yourself in the process, even when you're bad at this, because that is a requirement. If we work together, we're done beating ourselves up to reach our goals. That's why the goals never stick, because we don't want to keep beating ourselves up, right? I'll teach you how to be around food without losing control. I'll teach you how to plan for the treats so that it's not a renewed struggle every time you reach for a candy bar, right? I'm not about feeling restricted for all of life. It's not an all or nothing game for me. I'm not going to be prescribing a nutrition plan during this 4 weeks. You get to pick what you eat through this whole month. We are only going to be working on the cravings that you are experiencing. We're also going to dig out those tiny little thoughts in your head that make it seem okay to go crazy at the buffet, right? Those little thoughts like, oh, this isn't a big deal. This is a one-time thing. It's fine, right? You've all heard that before. And if you want to continue on after this, we will be starting a year-long weight loss and diabetes prevention program that we are going to make it last. It is not going to be a quick fix. And that is a good thing because you've probably tried that 8 or 9 or 10 times, right? Like we don't want to make it a quick drop a few pounds and then gain it all back later, right? We want to make sure that we are using the skills that we are developing. And before we wrap up today, just think about it for a second, because going through the cravings without acting on them is hard. This is not easy stuff. Again, if it was easy stuff to be able to do, we probably wouldn't be sitting here. It would be obvious, right? But just because it's hard, it doesn't mean it's not a reason to do it anyway, or not to do it. Anyway, but the skills that you'll develop in order to stop acting on cravings are the same skills that you'll need in order to stick to your food plan, and in order to stick to your health goals, and in order to get the body that you want. And these skills transfer into other areas of your life so you can fill your life with purpose and whatever else you want. So if your goal is to lose a few pounds, feeling cravings and feeling the emotions surrounding them is 100% a skill that you need to practice over and over again until you get it right. And if you want my help, like I said, join me in January and we will do this all together. Let us know if you have any questions. And Melody, if you want to take over the logistics part of it, that would be great.
Oops, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I just put up the craving solution information. So if you're interested in joining us, you can click on the join us. And by us, I mean Nicole. And she is going to lead you in that 4-week cravings, mastery program. So we're excited about that. And really, like she said, this is really sort of a kickstart and helping you sort of reshape your mindset around this, because I think so many people, like Nicole said, and shared personal experiences about, that emotional piece, that, time where I find myself, okay, I'm sitting in front of the TV. It must mean I'm trying to eat because that's what we did when I was little. And, all of those associations to those times where it was, it was a comfort. And so, and I find myself too, like thinking about how we reward our kids even now to like prevent some of those things in the future. And it's hard because society has wrapped around food as a reward. So trying to figure out other rewards too. And just, as a parent, I think all of this is super interesting and how we can really dig deep even earlier, for the future. But anyway, so we have that. Nicole, what do you think when you've worked with clients on this, what do you think like the biggest roadblock for people is out of all of these things that you find that they struggle with the most when it comes to cravings?
Not feeling surprised that there's so much resistance around it. And I say that because when we practice it, like if we go into something knowing to expect it, that's one thing.
Yeah.
And then when it comes up in the wild, when you're at work and somebody
Yeah.
brings in donuts, when you're, out at going to a baseball game and you pass the hot dog stand and these cravings hit, it always seems like it's outrageous and it's crazy and you're out of control for that moment, right? And it's unexpected. So having that, like, okay, listen, brain is doing exactly what brain wants to do right now. That this is normal. Nothing's wrong with me. I think it's just working through that process that is the biggest surprise for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's super helpful. Well, thank you guys again for joining tonight. And if you would like more information, you know where to find us at farmtotable.life. And you can send us a message on Instagram at farmtotableteam. And you can also send us an email or fill out a contact form if you have further information about joining us. So hopefully we'll see you, and Nicole will see you. Hopefully we'll see you, and Nicole will see you.